Farm Basics is brought to you by the Liberty Link Trait and Ignite herbicide from Bayer. The most reliable weed management solution, Liberty Link and Ignite are the link to efficient row crop production and sustainable weed management.
Our Farm Basics is rocks. Boy, Darren, this sounds like a really complicated farm topic we got here.
Well, we're going to talk about potassium then, right? Because a lot of our potassium actually comes from the rocks that are out in our soil, over millions of years perhaps. But when we think about rocks in fields, we more often think about the problems that rocks can cause. Problems with our equipment specifically, and also problems if you're a kid growing up on a farm and have to pick rock. That's just a bad
Yeah, but
problem.
fortunately, Darren, there are rock pickers now, so you don't have to go pick rocks manually anymore.
Oh man, what are farm kids going to do, Brent? How are we going to get that program to get us ready and in shape for football in the fall?
Well, I'm sure that we'll come up with something. But anyway, getting back to this whole rock situation, what happens out on farms is we have a few issues. So when we're going through with equipment and pulling it in the ground, if you hit a big rock, that's a problem. It could break stuff, it could stop your tractor, it can cause a lot of issues there. There's not a whole lot you can do when those rocks are below ground, but they can cause some major issues.
Well, when you talk about rocks, really the size is the big thing. Now, if you've got a great big boulder, now that's one issue, but if you've got rocks that are maybe the size of your fist, or maybe the size of your head or something like that. Now those kind of rocks can actually get picked up very easily and get into equipment, like a combine head, for example, and can cause a lot of dollars worth of damage, and it can be pretty dangerous too in case it gets jammed in something that you're trying to operate.
Yep, so what a lot of farmers will do is they'll go out with a roller in the spring and push those rocks into the ground, so now all the rocks are at least at ground level. So when the farmer comes along in the fall with the combine, he doesn't pick those up. Now there are rock traps in combines, so hopefully rocks don't get all the way up and through everything and damage a whole bunch of that combine, but it does happen occasionally. So once again, the reason why the farmers want to push those into the ground is so they don't get them picked up later on.
Well, and with rocks now, you may say, well, boy, it'd be terrible to have to farm ground that has rocks in it, and absolutely, you're certainly at an advantage when you have no rocks out in your field compared to a field that has lots of rocks in it. But don't feel so bad for those farmers. You see, a lot of the rock piles around the country are actually disappearing. Guys are selling them to landscapers and other uses.
Yeah, but that market was probably at its prime about 3 or 4 years ago. After the economic downturn, farmers don't get quite as much money out of their rock piles anymore, but a lot of them still are selling rock piles to landscapers. So, there is a good side to the whole rock thing. The other good thing that's come in the last few years is we have much better equipment now, so farmers can go out and no-till out in fields that have a lot of rocks. So they don't have to do tillage and keep pulling up new rocks year after year after year after year. They can just go out and put that seed in the ground a couple inches deep, and they're not going real deep into the soil.
Well, Brian, in true confession order here, we don't really have a lot of rocks on our farm. We're pretty lucky.
Yeah, we just have a few fields where you have some issues.
The area of the country where we're at and the way our land is, we don't have a lot of issues with rocks, but there are quite a few farmers around the country that this is a major concern for them every year. Historically, farmers have spent a lot of time hand picking those rocks out of fields. There is mechanized equipment available where farmers can actually drive it through the field and pick a lot of those rocks up. But every year when farmers are doing tillage and other farming practices, it seems like more rocks just seem to come up every year. So it is a big concern.
Yep. Now, one last thing, I guess, that I wanted to mention is this fall we had particularly dry conditions where we farm. And so farmers that had rocks in their fields, when they were going through with the combine, or especially when they had chopping corn heads, there was something spinning on the corn head, there were sparks that were flying coming off those rocks, and there were some fires that were caused out in fields. So that's another reason why it's good to get rocks out of the field.
Well, another thing that you want to get out of your fields is our weed of the week. Can you identify this week's weed?